Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada, Mr. Snow.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. We'd like to welcome new RTC member, City Councilman Craig Hafen from the City of Mesquite.
Same speech?
Councilman, this is a twofer. You get to do the same speech.
It's great to be here. I'm Craig Hafen from Mesquite, and I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Here you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Your agenda is in order.
Entertain a motion on the agenda. Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. All right, under the new state statute, we now have 2 periods of citizens' participation. By statute and traditionally, at the end of the meeting, for those citizens wanting to comment on items not on the agenda. At this time, we are taking public comment from citizens on those items that are part of today's agenda. So if you wish to speak, step forward, put your name and address on the record. We'll be happy to hear from you.
My name is Joe Maviglia, and the meeting is closed. No. I apologize for that comment. First question is, how much time do I have?
The traditional 3 minutes, Mr. Maviglia, if you need more, we'll leave it up to the board's discretion.
I would appreciate more.
How much more are we talking?
Probably 5 minutes.
We'll compromise. We'll go 4.
Okay.
And we'll play it by ear.
Buzz me when you're
I will start the timer as soon as you begin to speak.
Okay. First off, I have spent quite a few years on a Citizens Committee for Better Transit. We were appointed by Ron Lurie, mayor at the time, and Ron Lurie was smart enough to put a friend on the committee to govern our committee. And when he found out that the councilman and an individual joined forces, and Ron Lurie fired both of them. We as a committee stayed together. We are the ones that are in fact responsible for the bus system that you have today. We were instrumental in getting S&R Associates to come in and do the research study that the federal government would accept in order to get the federal funds. Unfortunately, prior to the federal funds coming in, at the time the RTC slipped us a Mickey by using state funds and told the federal government to go fly a kite. They in turn changed the specifications on the S&R Associates advice and switched the transmission and the air conditioning to favor Flyer Bus Company. The Flyer Bus Company in the end got the contract. Unfortunately, 2 years down the road, they had to spend $9 million to put new engines in the Flyer buses. That's only part of the track record of what's been going on in this town. And if you are a nosy guy like me, you find out that corruption was living well in City Hall during the Ron Lurie regime. They did a swindle on the west side on property. They turned $1.5 million piece of property into a $13 million profit. They froze out the people that wanted to get part of the action by closing the loopholes that were required for individuals to submit proposals to acquire those properties. At the time, the BLM would put property up for auction, and if it didn't sell because it was too far out of the city, they didn't take it off the rolls. It stayed on the rolls, and anybody could come in after that and buy it for the purchase price that was set by the BLM. Consequently, they were able to strike a deal, and they profited from it. Then the next go-around was, as Citizens Committee for Better Transit, we stayed in power, and we met biweekly and then weekly to get a bus system that was adequate for Nevada. We were successful in that venture. The unfortunate part was, at the time, the RTC administration changed the specifications that were put together by S&R Associates that was accepted by the federal government, and when it come time to get the buses, they told the federal government to get the hell out of the way because they used state tax money to purchase the buses. On and on and on. Then the last issue was the fact that we, as a committee, wound up getting the buses, getting the issue started. Though we didn't get the buses we wanted, the best bus at the time was the Gillig Bus Company. They came in with a bid that was $400,000 cheaper than the Flyer buses. But they lost the bid simply because they played games down at the RTC. And it's all on record. I'm not whistling smoke or blowing smoke, okay? I've laid it out in this letter that I want passed out to all the members of this council. And the last word is move forward with caution. The red flag has been raised, and I want to raise it. $50 million is a discrepancy that is suspect at best. Something's wrong. I can smell it. And when I smell it, I'm usually right. I've been right in the past. Okay? I wasn't around when the county commissioners got their just payment for their flagrant abuse of the law. It's unfortunate that these kind of things occur. And when a $600 million budget is submitted for transportation, be damn careful. Cross your T's and dot your I's, because something's wrong. Now, who the hell is dirty? If there's anybody that's dirty, I hope the hell the FBI is listening, and I hope the hell they wind up in jail if they're dirty.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moviglia. And we'll put this letter into the public record.
Thank you.
And Todd, this is speaking to an agenda item?
Right.
Great.
And I'm just making a general comment, and the general comment is this.
Put your name on the
I
record.
believe, Todd Farlow, 240 North 19th Street. I believe that the RTC ought to manage their own bus company. But as Joe pointed out, there's reasons for that they don't. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Good morning. I'm Marcia Herbert, volunteer advocate for the drivers and passengers of the RTC. If you need help getting certified for the paratransit, Mr. Brown, I'd be happy to assist you.
Marcia, hold on. If you're hearing us in the back, could you check that microphone? Make sure we're picking it up. Could we start again, Marcia?
I'm Marcia Herbert, volunteer advocate for the drivers and passengers of the RTC. Good morning to the commissioners. And I would like to tell you, Mr. Brown, if you would like me to assist you in getting certified for the paratransit, all you need to do is call.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I have questions on item 41 of the consent agenda. I see that we are again reducing the services that First Transit has to provide on the paratransit. You did it at the renewal too, and now once again we're reducing services. I see that they're giving back money this time instead of increasing the cost. However, I would like to know, of the $627,000 that RTC is going to save in their lower compensation, it concerns me that one of the things you're taking out is they're losing payment. I'm assuming that's what the, let me just get the correct wording, I'm sorry. When they do, it's when they don't provide services. There is a penalty for that. You've taken that out, except for some preventative maintenance work. Does that mean that when they're 2 hours late, they get paid for the ride? When somebody rides, like I have, 14 miles out of their way because of the manifest, does that mean they don't get penalized? Is that where the money's coming? And if so, what other things are they now getting to slide on because of the reduction? In addition to which, I would like to know how the $627,000 that the RTC will be saving compares to the cost of all the services that we're losing. If we're losing more than you're gaining, then I think we need to look at it much more carefully. This will be the second time our services are reduced. I don't understand. It can't get much worse. We're having problems, as you know, all the time. Please give that some consideration. If the services they're reducing cost more than the money you're saving, you need to take a look. We cannot blatantly approve everything that's brought before the board. I guess I don't know what's going to happen with item 53, but my statements are still the same. The bids were skewed, just like the paratransits were. The rated items were unfairly rated. One of the evaluators gave First Transit a higher experience rating than they gave to Veolia, who's been running this system top-notch since 1993. How that can get by people, and it goes on and on. There's no permits and taxes charged. The service vehicles that were in the bid, in the first bid, they have a 0 number. How can you have a 0 number for something that's required by the bid? You know how? Because when the contract comes out, it's no longer in the contract. That's how. Please look at it carefully. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to the board on agended items?
Yes, this is, good morning, I'm Tricia Anderson. I'm going to make it brief. I know you have great drivers. I'm supporting the drivers. I'm there for them. We need good drivers. I'm from, actually, like I said before, I'm from New York City. What I suggest, we need to get more drivers. You get drivers, vacation drivers. They have all kind of drivers in New York City. And you have good ones. A lot of drivers are being very frustrated. So I think we need to work with what we have, and we have good ones. Because I live on the 103, I do the 204, and we need to sign, the one thing we need to do is sign the contract. They're not working on a contract. We need to sign it, actually, within this week. It would be great, okay? Thank you, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. You all know me, Jeff Reyes, Financial Secretary for Amalgamated Transit Union. As you know, as you're well aware of, as we are well aware of, the AG came down with their ruling, or her ruling, I should say, and you will probably be rescinding the vote on the bidding process. What we want you to know is that the bidding process was done properly. The staff has done a good job in presenting that bid to you and their recommendation. Yesterday, the Central Labor Council voted unanimously to support the decision of the RTC staff in their recommendation. And I'm here to present that to you, that we believe that some of you who have voted against staff recommendation should reconsider your vote, and you should have another vote on the bid that is before you at this time. That's all I have to say at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to the board in public comment period number 1? Seeing no one, we'll close the public comment period number 1 and move on to the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your next item is to receive the General Manager's report. If we can go to that, please. We begin this month with a bit of an education on a new type of traffic signal that is being installed at select locations throughout the valley. Now, you have seen this traffic signal probably in numerous locations around places where you drive, not just in this valley, but in other locations in the United States. The new signals that we're talking about will replace this particular type of traffic signal head, which is referred to as a doghouse, a 5-can doghouse. That's a technical term, by the way. With this type of a signal, it's referred to as a protected permissive signal. Permissive being that when you have that green ball there, drivers have the ability to turn left when it is safe to do so. However, our brains are conditioned to sometimes forget that information about yielding on the green, and when we see the green ball, we go ahead and make a left turn thinking we are protected, and sometimes that results in some very dangerous T-bone type crashes. So what we're changing this traffic signal head out to a different one. You can see the flashing yellow arrow before you, and it is a different type of traffic signal head. These new signals will replace the green ball with the flashing yellow arrow as indicated, and these signals provide a visual reminder that drivers can't just turn left because there may be oncoming traffic ahead. Oh, we lost the feed, so we'll have to see if we can go back to the presentation if we could, please. So we're looking for a way to educate drivers on the new signals, and we had listed the help of an all-star cast in that endeavor. And so we're going to go to a video right now that we're very proud of. We wanted to show this video to you.
So what's new?
What's new? It's what's old. The left turn yield on green ball is what's old. Flashing yellow arrow.
Tell me more.
Tell you? I can show you. Say you're going to make a left turn. On the green arrow, you turn left. A yellow arrow means the signal is going to change to red and warns you to clear the intersection. A red arrow means you stop. Next, you'll see a flashing yellow arrow. The flashing yellow arrow means you must yield to oncoming traffic and pedestrians. Complete your turn when it is safe to do so.
That was simple.
It is. A national study determined that the flashing yellow arrow is easier to understand than the green ball in the left turn lane. Any other questions?
I got what I need.
The new flashing yellow arrow signals will be installed gradually throughout the valley. For more information, visit rtcsnv.com.
That was quite a cast of characters.
I just hope that goes to show you that there is nothing your staff won't do for the sake of traffic safety.
As you can tell, that was an in-house production. And even though the production value was very high, the budget was very, very low for that. We turned to our technical committees for assistance in that regard, and I'd like to thank Mike Hand, who is sitting to my right, for his role as director and producer of that bit, and writer of the script, and our Deputy General Manager, Christina Quigley, who stars in it along with John Pinuelos, who is the city traffic engineer from the city of Henderson, and Angela Torres from the Government Affairs team, who also assisted in the production of the piece. It is up and running on the RTC's website. It's being distributed to channels 2 and 4, as well as to each of the entities for their use. I also understand that now we're getting requests from pay-per-view companies for that piece to play. I think we're going to turn those down, but this is a public service announcement anyway. We are trying to get the information out, get people's attention about the use of these flashing yellow signals. They are in use in I think 5 locations now in the valley, and they're being expanded in the city, in the cities in the county, and a number of additional locations.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilwoman?
Is that an RTC Ferrari bus?
Well, it's been noted in the media that we do have a diverse fleet, and we do have, I think, the most attractive public transit fleet in the country, but we were able to secure the donation of that vehicle for Tina's use temporarily while we produce that piece. So.
Commissioner June Kiliani?
Thank you. Are we going to make sure that the DMV includes this, or is it already part of their instruction manual, and we should make sure that the driver's ed focuses on those changes too?
It is part of their instruction manual.
Okay.
They've already.
Page 22.
It's on our website.
The problem is, though, driver's ed was phased out in many of our high schools over the years, so we probably should make sure that there's some kind of communication, maybe to the schools, to put something in their newsletter, or parent newsletter, or something along those lines. It might be another outreach that you can do at no cost.
Excellent suggestion.
And then maybe for those of us in local governments that do the email newsletters, maybe some kind of language that you could provide to all of us that we can include in our newsletters. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick comment is that we do have those types of signals in northern Nevada also, and are finding them very, very useful in eliminating a lot of the left turn crashes as well. So they're very successful, and we look forward to working with RTC and having them down here too. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you wish to speak?
He's coming up. He didn't star in the video, but he helped with technical consulting on the video. And we'd also like to thank Glenn Levitt from our staff who assisted with the production on that as well. For your next item, I'd like to welcome Mr. Tom Brady to come forward. Tom is the City of North Las Vegas Civil Engineering and Design Manager, and he's also the Vice Chairman of the Nevada chapter of the American Public Works Association. He's on their state board. Tom is here to present an award to the Commission on behalf of the American Public Works Association. Mr. Brady.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Jacob. The American Public Works Association is an organization that exists to develop and support the organizations that build public projects and plan and build organizations and improve communities. Now, through our annual awards program, we basically recognize projects that are of distinction, that are in the community, that both support the public good as well as the objectives of the agencies. Now, in this case, our Project of the Year award, we offer them at 2 times a year. We have projects in the spring as well as in the fall based on amounts. And what we do is we recognize projects that are a service to the community, as well address community need and intricacy of design, aesthetic consideration, difficulty of construction, cost growth and time growth, as well as the complexity of financing. Now, I know that's a whole lot of noise, but I wanted to take this opportunity to recognize the RTC. This spring, you were nominated and received the Transportation Project of the Year Award for under $5 million for the RTC Transit Terminal at Westcliff and Durango. And we wanted to take this opportunity to present that award. Your staff, Bridge Galati, with your staff, was the administrator for RTC, and it was designed by KGA Architecture and constructed by Whiting Turner Contracting Company. And we'd like to present the award at this time.
We'd like to have Mr. Brady come back and present this plaque to the Commission, if we could, please.
Expected to multitask in many different ways.
Are you kidding me?
Thanks again for doing that.
Thank you, Tom. We appreciate that very much. Mr. Chairman, your next item is another series of Good News Awards. The International Association of Business Communicators recently presented their Bronze Quill Awards, and I'm pleased to announce that the RTC's Marketing and Communications team received 2 awards. The first award is an award of merit for the RTC Las Vegas Guide Brochure. This piece is designed to help residents and tourists access shopping and other dining options on the Strip. and downtown. It features the Blue Man Group on the cover, something the judges noted was very eye-catching, and it was designed by Jan Wadsworth, our graphic artist. Congratulations to Jan and to Jackie Dennis and the entire marketing team for the award. The next award is an award of excellence for the RTC Transit Guide. This cover features a colorful illustration of the downtown Las Vegas area, showcasing the new Bonneville Transit Center, the RTC's transit vehicles, and other downtown landmarks such as the Lou Ruvo Brain Institute and the World Market Center, and also new bike lanes in downtown Las Vegas. The judges praised this entry for packing a lot of information into a small amount of space. It's whimsical but still practical, they said. So congratulations to Jackie Dennis and her team once again for this fine award. As you know, the RTC is one of the most multifaceted transportation organizations in the country. The RTC marketing team developed a logo that embodies that. The World of the RTC logo highlights the cycling, transit, freeway and arterial management, carpooling and transportation planning efforts that are all under the RTC's purview. The team received, thank you, Mr. Levitt, this beautiful Hermes Creative Award for the effort. Hermes Creative Awards is an international competition honoring the messengers and creators of traditional and emerging media. The award honors outstanding achievement and service to the communication profession and fosters and supports the efforts of marketing and communication professionals who contribute their unique talents to public service and charitable organizations. I think that little piece was written by a marketing expert that I just read to you. Congratulations to the marketing team for 3 terrific awards. We'd like to recognize them and give them a round of applause, please. Next, we've had requests from board members, particularly Commissioner Chris Gianchiliani, who's asked us to come to the board and make a presentation on the results of our transit amenities efforts. And we have the manager of the Transit Amenities Division of the RTC, Mr. Carl Scarborough, who will come forward now and make a presentation to the board.
Good morning. Wanted to take the opportunity to come and share with you what we've done so far in trying to get out transit amenities to our bus stops and where we're headed. As you know, we kind of got involved in bus stops and bus shelters in 2005, 2006, and we inherited a system of over 3,500 bus stops and about 1,000 bus shelters scattered throughout the valley. It is our goal to try to create clean, safe, and inviting bus stops that appeal not only to our riders, but to our non-riding customers as well. If we can go to the next. As you can see, we have now over 3,500 bus stops. You can see on the map, if you can see it, we have the bus stops indicated that have shelters and the bus stops indicated that don't have shelters. Right now, we're at about 1,400 shelters out of 3,700 bus stops. It is our ultimate goal to get a shelter in at every stop where one will fit. This is an example of our new general market bus shelter. 2007, we did a focus group study, and it became pretty evident to us that a lot of people had opinions about the RTC and about transit and bus stops, even though they may not have been riders. So we realized that the appearance of the bus stops, the appearance of our fleet, had a great impact on what people's perception was of transit. We received a $4 million grant to begin putting out new general market bus shelters. This is the design of the new shelter. We like it because it's solar powered. It doesn't draw any power from the streetlight circuit. We think it's attractive looking, and the roof is kind of reminiscent of the Strip and Downtown Express or the Resort Corridor bus shelters. We have installed 150 right now, and we are installing another 150 this year, and we will install another 150 next year. And we hope to continue as federal funds become available to keep that pace of getting these bus shelters out. In addition to these, we've also installed 40 new shelters on the Strip, and Outdoor Promotions has installed 50 shelters in the general market per their franchise agreement. The next map shows you in green the locations where we have installed the 150, and the red stars indicate the 25 locations where Outdoor Promotions installed their general market shelters. Additionally, we have constructed 18 bus rapid transit stations. While not developed as part of the transit amenities program, they provide a nice platform and experience for a great number of riders. We've also worked with the private sector. This is a picture of a new bus shelter that the Suncoast installed, at one of our bus stops. Our riders, our customers get the advantage of it, and we got to work very closely with Suncoast. We have a similar shelter at South Point and 4 shelters at Hughes Corporate Center owned by Crescent Properties, where they've come in and built amenities to serve our riders, and it's been a great partnership. We've also installed 70 of these new blade type signs on some of the express or premium services. What's unique about these is there's a schedule holder on each sign on the pole, and it not only tells the riders when the next bus is coming, but what areas and where the bus goes. So that's been a great tool for us to get stop-specific information out to our customers. As we move forward with the next 150 shelters, I wanted to walk you through how we got to where we're going on terms of the stops. So we took a list of all of our stops and we sorted them by ridership, and we took that list and examined it to see, first of all, does the stop already have a shelter? And if it does, then we're just going to set that aside for now, and we're going to give our priorities to stops that don't have shelters. And if the stop doesn't have a shelter, we're going to look at it and look at the site and say, is it physically possible to put a shelter there? And if the answer is no, then we're going to set it aside for now. If the answer is yes, then we're going to go and look and see if there's a right-of-way or an easement available to install that shelter. So if the answer is no, we're going to set it aside for now. If the answer is yes, then we're going to take that list of stops and we're going to look at them to make sure that we're following the environmental justice requirements, in that we're distributing the shelters equally without regard to socioeconomic status. And also, we're going to look and make sure that all of our member entities are participating in that. That list will then be our list of stops to receive a shelter for Phase 2. This is an example of a bus stop on Charleston. And we would look at this and we would say, okay, there is physically room behind the sidewalk. There is an easement or right-of-way behind the sidewalk where we could install the shelter, and we look at the sidewalk that we can get the shelter in and still maintain access for persons with disabilities. So this would be a location that's suitable for a shelter. There it is. This is a location on Desert Inn just west of Paradise, and we would look at this location. And obviously, there's no way to put a shelter in there and maintain adequate ADA clearance. And there's a physical barrier, even if there were right-of-way, there's a physical barrier that prevents us from doing that. So this would be a not suitable location. This map shows 200 locations that we've identified from our first effort that can receive a shelter. That's 150 that we'll be installing with grant funds, and we went ahead and identified an additional 50 locations that would be part of the Outdoor Promotions franchise agreement. We have some other upcoming projects. This is a picture of the Sahara project that's going on right now. We're going to have 61 stations or shelters there that are completed as part of this project. If I'm not mistaken, it's supposed to be completed in February, and then we should start operations in April. Also, Boulder Highway, there's another 23 stations that are already completed. We're using them for Route 107, and in September, we'll start using those for the Henderson and Boulder Highway Express routes. We have, of our active bus stops, we have about 4% that are not ADA accessible, which means that somebody in a wheelchair cannot get easily to or from that bus stop. 123 of those, there is no existing sidewalk. We could come in and pour a concrete pad where somebody could get on and off the bus, but it doesn't really do them any good because they can't get anywhere from there. Of that, of the remainder, we've identified 12 that were very easy resolutions. It was simply where there was a detached sidewalk from the back of curb. We went out and poured concrete slabs and have fixed those. We have another 22 locations that are currently in design, and that design work will be done here in the next few months, and we'll move forward with addressing those challenges as well, basically trying to get as many people who can onto fixed route and not create additional demand for paratransit. The picture I'm showing you is a stop on Boulder Highway near Wagon Wheel. We had a request for an improvement at that stop, and we went out and looked at it, and you can see on the right screen where the edge of the asphalt for the roadway is. We came in, we poured a pad, we made it a little bit extra wide for safety, we put in a shelter, and because the city had constructed that nice walking path right behind it, we were able to just tie right into it and address a transportation need and make a one more stop accessible for somebody with a disability. Probably the most important thing, though, that we do going forward is we don't create any new stops that are not accessible. We have a new thing we're working with our IT department. It is a text system where you can use your texting on your phone, and you can text to 41411. You text right RTC, a space, and then the bus stop number, and it'll actually tell you when the next bus is scheduled to ride or to arrive. And if that stop has more than one route, it'll show you both routes. So if you're at the stop and you're wondering, what the time is, you can text that in. We are currently putting the stickers on the signs. We'll be done with that in the next few months of getting a sticker on every sign so that information is at every bus stop. And we'll be doing a media campaign for that in the fall. At the same time, we're working with a company to develop a smartphone application that you'll be able to use on Apple and Android. And you can actually report to us problems at bus stops with your phone. You can take pictures. It gives us the GPS coordinates. It goes right into our system, and we can get out on it in a timely manner and correct those shortcomings. So we're able to empower our customers to help us improve our stops. Again, this is also an official launch in fall, and we'll be doing a media campaign for that as well. We haven't been without our challenges. As you're probably aware, safety has been a big challenge for us. We've had a number of very unfortunate accidents, and even though those were attributed to drivers who were either distracted or impaired, we've done a safety study and looked and found that one of the best things that we can do is to move the bus shelters behind the sidewalk. Additionally, the federal government is changing the ADA standards for clearance for mobility devices from 36 inches to 48 inches. So NDOT has already adopted that standard, and we are moving forward to implement that on all new installations. Physical barriers are an issue, as we've seen with a wall or a drainage ditch right behind the sidewalk that prevents us from putting in a shelter. And another issue we're having is NRS allows us to put in bus shelters and utility easements. We've been very successful in doing that in all of the cities. We're having a little difficulty with Clark County right now trying to discuss what the interpretation of a public utility easement is. We're talking to the DA's office right now and hope to have that resolved. We bring it up because if we're not successful, that will prevent us from installing bus shelters in a large part of Clark County, which is not something we want to do. So that's the good and the bad and where we are.
Thank you, Carl. Comments or questions? Commissioner Giunciliani?
Thank you, Carl, and thanks for the book. You did a very good job, especially did some breakouts, too, if you look at it, on identifying census areas and income and minorities, so I appreciate you putting that together. On the first matter, it was brought to my attention yesterday that Clark County has not been working as closely as we needed to be on the easement issue, so I'm sure that we will assist you with that. But I am also told that NV Energy has been absolutely refusing to give us any kind of easements, and I'm going to look at their franchise agreement and ask for an agenda item, at least from the county side. They don't let us paint ZAP boxes. They're just refuse everything. And I think, to be a public utility, they should have some responsibility, especially to make sure that people have access. So maybe we could have that as an agenda item, or because it's going to affect other franchises, Mr. Chair. So that's just something out there. You showed that one picture, the one where it was not suitable because of the smallness of the sidewalk and the pole and the wall. Could not a bench, though, simply be placed there? I know that there's some that you've identified where at least you could put some kind of seating, especially if it's an area where senior citizens may want to use it or something. And so I would hope that we would have that as a step-down approach, if you can't do a full-blown shelter, to have at least some kind of seating. And I think you've started to identify some of those as well.
And it's something we're thinking about. There will be locations where the benches are about 18 inches deep. Mm-hmm. So if you put a bench in on a 5-foot sidewalk, we're not going to achieve the 48 inches.
Right.
There may be an alternative bench that we can do, or if it's a wider sidewalk, that's something we can do and have done.
Or what they've done in some countries is they've done a little bar so that there's a way to perch, so to speak, for lack of a better term. So that might be an additional thing. As we put in shelters and/or benches, we are adding trash cans, correct?
Yes. We're trying to develop an actual system where the ridership at a stop will dictate generally what types of amenities it gets. So we don't want to put out a lot of trash cans at stops that don't get any riders, but it's very rare to find a stop with a bench and no trash can.
Totally, because it then adds to the look of the stop, and then with no disrespect to Outdoor Promotions, and they wind up with even that much more to have to clean up when there's no place for anybody to put anything. So to me, trash makes good sense, and it's not always just on ridership. People need a place to put something.
Yes.
And maybe it's not a full-blown can, maybe they do the plastic sacks like they do in other cities now, where you just do the rim, and they just have the plastic bag, and you just pull that out. So it's simpler and easier, and it's not as costly. So there may be other alternatives that you can take a look at on that. If there's graffiti on our signs, whom do we call? Not the shelters themselves, but like on our bus stop numbers. They call you?
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you know what number to call? Because I'm just thinking, would they call the county or the city of Las Vegas if they were in the city for their graffiti hotline, or how do we coordinate?
Typically, we would ask people to call 228-RIDE, which is the main number for RTC. We do get input from the public response offices, and we go out and take care of that. Additionally, we've got a team of a couple of people where all they do is go out and drive the bus stops and looks for those types of issues. And we start and we approach it route by route. But we depend on citizen input and customer input, and we're always looking for that kind of information.
Okay, so in your outreach, education-wise, maybe, especially if you get that app, that might be another place for people to be able to coordinate that. So that's not necessarily part of Outdoor Promotions' contract.
Not the signs, that's our responsibility.
And then you mentioned that we got the 150, and that's paid for grant money through the feds, which is great. And then we'll do another 150, and that's the CMA or CCMA or whatever that federal grant was. But we do have an agenda item today to consider Outdoor Promotions not to do the additional 50 that you mentioned. So I didn't want people to make an assumption if we do approve that extension.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up. I don't believe that's on the agenda. We're still negotiating on how best to respond to that.
Okay.
But yes, Outdoor Promotions has explained to us, because of their business model and the way the economy is right now, that's an obligation they're looking to pass on for temporarily.
Okay. And then finally, the shelters look great, but in our putting in the jazzy or new looking, we lost advertising for them to be able to make a profit. And secondly, we lost seating. We went in many instances from 4 seating to 2 because of the new design.
Yeah.
So, as we get funky and jazzy, we also should remember that we need to accommodate. The good part is if you're in a wheelchair, you can back up into that spot, but that's not always necessary, especially at the busier riderships. More seating is actually better in the long run. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other comments or questions? Just two. One, you mentioned that the new ADA is 48 inches.
Yes.
Are we required to go back and retrofit those existing sites that have the 36 clearance?
The existing sites you'd only be required to go back when you reconstruct them or replace the shelter. We have a number of shelters that would be considered grandfathered, or whatever the term is, where they're allowed to remain simply because they were in before ADA or a change in the requirements.
And then, Carl, you mentioned as far as the overall selection, and I don't know what words you used exactly, but you said you don't go by demographics. What's the key criterion used for site selection for a shelter?
We take our list and we rank it by ridership. We take out the stops that already have shelters, and then we go through and look and see if we can physically put it in, or if there's right-of-way or an easement. And then we have to apply the standards of environmental justice, which is started with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And it basically says if you're going to take federal money and spend it, you have to spend it evenly. So we couldn't put all of our bus shelters in Green Valley or Summerlin. We have to distribute them throughout the community without regard to socioeconomic status. So I apologize if I misspoke.
No, just perfect. All right. Commissioner.
Thank you. But along those lines, because it was one of the points I brought up at the bus stop shelter thing, is just looking at ridership doesn't allow our older areas of town to get the seating, at least at a minimum. And I know that you're working closely to try to do that, because it's Councilwoman Tarkanian's, just down on Bonneville, there's no place for folks, and you want to look at accommodating that. So I would hope then, that ridership is not the only component, because we ought to look at where they have not had it, and it's more an income-based, or you did a census thing on age. and that we should take a look at that to try to bump those up. So I do appreciate you working on that. We're not done, but we do, I would hope with the next 150 that we can target some of the older areas that have not been accommodated.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
As long as the older areas are funky and jazzy.
We'll take jazzy.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilwoman.
I just wanted to add that many of the older areas have the senior homes in them too, and that's why it's really important to be watching that.
Yes. Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. That ends the general manager's report. And we now go to item number 3, which is to elect a chair and vice chair. And the RTC of Southern Nevada will receive nominations and vote to elect a chair and vice chair for the term of July 2011 through June 2013. It is a 2-year term. Following this action, the elected chair assumes responsibility for conducting the business of the meeting.
Open floor. Commissioner June Kiliani.
Thank you. I would make a nomination and motion to continue with your leadership and also with Mr. Eliason from North Las Vegas as a representative as the vice chair.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. We now go to your consent agenda. I believe Commissioner Giuliani wanted to have item number 40 pulled from the consent agenda. Is that correct, Commissioner?
If I might, Mr. Chair, 40, 41, and 49, I think were the 3 items that were not on, that had some questions.
Could we get those again?
40, 41, and 49.
Okay.
We'll take those separate. Entertain a motion. Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries.
Thank you. We now go to item number 40, and I'm going to ask that Assistant General Manager Jerry Keating read in this item, please.
Good morning. On August 13, 2009, the Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada approved a joinder agreement between RTC and Apple One Employment Services. As a result of the contract between Clark County and Apple One, pursuant to NRS 332.115.1M. Supplies, materials, or equipment that are available pursuant to the agreement with a vendor that is entered into an agreement with General Services Administration or another governmental agency located within the state. We ask the board to approve purchase orders to Apple One in the amount not to exceed $290,909 for utilization of the Clark County, Nevada agreement to provide temporary employment services for the period through June 30th, 2012, and authorize staff to issue purchase orders based on that agreement.
Commissioner Giuliani.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And just a couple of questions, and I know that you'll get more information on it. What have we spent to date on the current contract? Do you know that offhand?
Off the top of my head, I think we're somewhere in the neighborhood of about $150,000 based on last year's.
Okay, so you're bumping this because you may need to bring in more temporary staff, is my understanding, and that's your not-to-exceed language?
Yes, not to exceed because of our technical equipment area. We have gone from originally 36 ticket vending machines to currently 192, as well as an increase in our fleet. Our buses, basically, we brought in the 50 Wright vehicles that needed to have radios and equipment installed, as well as the new paratransit vehicles that are coming in that need to have that equipment installed as well. The quicker we install it, the quicker we get those revenue-generating vehicles out on the street. So that's why we bring the temporary staff in.
Okay. It's my understanding, too, from what you said, is that if you, as the contractor, find the individual, they still get paid a percentage. It's just a lower percentage. Why do we pay someone if we identify?
Because in accordance with the contract, if we identify them through Apple One, it does state that we would pay them 28%. Let me get the correct language here.
So you work off their list that they still put together, their personnel, then?
Yeah, and the reason we do that is when we have these positions that come up or we have this equipment that comes in, we need to hire these individuals rather quickly. And as quick as our HR department is, and they are very efficient and very effective, it's a lot easier for us to go out to an established bank of technically qualified people that these employment agencies have and bring those staff in a lot quicker.
So they pay a 28% plus the hourly if you go identify somebody off their list. But if they identify somebody off their list, we pay 34%.
Correct.
What I guess in my mind, and I'm being slow today, I don't understand why we would pay them anything for working off of their list. If we're giving them a description of what we need temporarily to put in, and they go through, because they've got a very detailed procedure on how they locate people with various expertise, isn't that what they would do anyway?
That is exactly what they would do, but that's the fee that they charge for their employment services.
And I understand you're working off the county's contract, and the same question came up with us 2 weeks ago, and we're looking at our contract no matter what. So these are some questions that I'll continue to raise there, which may impact what you all do. I think we've been under this one since '07. Their business license with the state of Nevada expired, so have they provided an up-to-date or a new one? And do they have a county business license? I did not see that in the backup.
I would have to refer that to our purchasing department,
Okay, so
but my
we would
best
need-
guess is that they are licensed
I
in
would
Clark
hope
County,
so.
and they do have insurance.
But we need to, it wasn't in the backup I've gotten is the old, so if we're updating this and extending a contract for financing, we should make sure that they're up to date. And it did
Okay.
not, item G referred to their Nevada state business license, which allegedly expired in '07. I'm sure they renewed it. But there is no county business license, and I would think they'd have to have that. On page 9, under diversity, they're missing language on sexual orientation and the transgender. Do we ask, I know there's a good statement in here with regard to looking at small business, working with minority, women-owned businesses. Do you know if they work with the BDAC, with the county, the Business Development
Advisory
Committee?
Council.
That might just be something down the road we may want to include because we're trying to do a better outreach as far as minority and business hiring. And then, so currently we have 4 temporary positions. You may look at an additional 4 temporary positions, which allows for the not to exceed dollar amount.
Yes,
But
ma'am.
at some point, you're going to review how long is temporary. It's 2 years for some individuals is not, in my opinion, a temp any longer. So if you would look at that, I think that that's a reasonable. There are times when you want temp. You should not make folks into a permanent if you can do a short term. It's better for government in the long run, and you employ other folks. But when they're on doing the same job over and over again, and then they don't ever get benefits, and then you're continuing to pay a percentage, then at some point, we probably should make them into full-time. So
We'll take that under
Okay.
advisement,
Thank you,
Commissioner.
thank you, Mr. Chair. If there's no other questions, I'll make a motion to approve with those corrections or changes.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? And that motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Item 41 is that the Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada approve Amendment Number 3 to the contract between the RTC and First Transit Incorporated for specialized services and authorize the chairman to sign this contract. Now, the RTC has approved a contract with First Transit going back to March 8, 2007. We've made amendments in 2008 and in 2009. Current economic conditions, however, dictate that we pay very close attention to all the costs, especially because of the state's cutbacks in Medicaid transportation. And what we have done is we have sat down, we've been able to successfully negotiate with First Transit and come up with this agreement that we have before you, which would save us about $627,000 going forward for the specialized services portion of their contract. The specialized services are the flexible demand response and the Silver Star and other related services. And this will basically allow the RTC to save $1 in the service hour rate beginning the first part of this month through June 30th for the rest of the fiscal year. And we believe that the negotiations we have made with First Transit in terms of the reduction in services are appropriate and are insignificant with regard to the quality level and overall service. If there are any further questions, Sue Joseph and Sandra Stanko are here. We'll be available to answer those questions.
Commissioner June Kiliani.
Thank you. I just had 2 simple questions. On 3G, or item 3, we're reducing the training time for the drivers, and I was concerned what that might entail? Because I would think with your paratransit group, you'd want to make sure the drivers are well-trained on how to deal with those with the disability, how to talk to them correctly, and all that part of it. And so I wasn't sure if this was a commensurate reduction, or is this just something, do you know offhand? I'm sorry.
If I can address that, Commissioner. This is a rollover of our previous agreement with First Transit back in 2009. At that time, they went from about 80 hours of training down to the 62, which is 20 hours greater than their corporate requirements. So we are already going above what their corporate requirements are for training. Part of the training includes a time where RTC actually goes in and talks about ADA eligibility and sensitivity, so we are part of their training program at this point in time. So this program has been in effect for the last 2 years.
Okay, so there's not an actual newer reduction that came into
No.
play. That was my concern.
Everything here is pretty much a rollover. The only change is that we acknowledge some staffing changes that they have done that actually increases their staffing, but we made that a part of the contract.
Okay, and is there a process then, and because you've dealt with one or two of my constituents, I think, that have had concerns about how some folks were spoken to and referred to. So in the RTC training, you deal with that, but what are the ramifications if that continues, that behavior continues?
Certainly. I'll be happy to speak from what I know of the contractors training program. They hold safety meetings every month, and these types of items are also addressed to the entire driver population. Any driver who has either a complaint that they feel goes beyond an acceptable level or has a pattern is brought in for retraining, and there's a very extensive retraining that is not affected by this contract.
Okay. And I know in one instance, two disabled individuals were left and not even picked up. Do you get those complaints and then you deal with First Transit, or do they go generally just directly to First Transit?
They go to our customer service department, and our customer service is
So you're at
aware of
least
them.
aware of that, and then you work with the
Yes, because our customer service manager is a part of our regular contract compliance meetings, and he brings these things to our attention.
Okay, and finally, because this is a rollover, it may not be in here, but I didn't see any non-discrimination language, so I would just hope that all of our contracts include the updated. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move approval, making sure that we got the non-discrim language and with the amendment. Thank you.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the Commission, we now go to the transit portion of your consent agenda for item number 49, which is to approve the Title VI Update Report. Civil Rights Act of 1964 required that all providers of public services, as well as those in receipt of federal funds, take steps to ensure that there is no discrimination, intentional or otherwise, on the basis of race, creed, or gender in the provision of their services. Title VI of that Act contains provisions specifically related to the planning and provision of public transportation and mandates periodic reporting of how these provisions are being implemented. In 1994, Title VI was expanded by executive order to encompass low-income persons and families. The RTC is committed to providing quality public transportation service to everyone in compliance with these federal regulations and laws, and the Commission is therefore prepared an update to the Title VI program in accordance with Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration guidance to demonstrate that the RTC and the agency's transit systems continue to serve the needs of the people of the Las Vegas Valley without discrimination. And so we're recommending approval of this report, and I believe that Commissioner Gianchigliani has some language she would like to have read into the record to expand upon this language.
Commissioner?
Thank you. I did check with Jacob and Zev and Jeff Wells. We can go beyond what the federal, we just can't go below what the federal language is. So all I'm going to ask is that we model what the state of Nevada has done with their new language, which includes sexual orientation and the gender issue. And so that would be my motion, Mr. Chair.
I will add for the record, Mr. Chairman, that we have included the language that Commissioner Gianchigliani referenced in our other procurement documents that involve local and state procurements.
Right, and I think they just picked up the old language and just kind of rolled it over on this one, is what happened.
Very good. There's a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? A motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the Commission, we now go to the Metropolitan Planning Organization portion of your agenda. Dr. Fred O'Haney will have the first item.
Thank you, Jacob. Item 50 is to approve the Nevada Department of Transportation fiscal year 2012 annual work program for Clark County projects. Mr. Chairman, NDOT has developed its annual work program for fiscal year 2012, which includes major maintenance projects within the Clark County area. This item was approved by the Executive Advisory Committee at its June meeting. Mr. Rudy Malthorborn, NDOT's Deputy Director, is here to give a brief presentation on the work program.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present our annual work program. We visit every one of 17 counties across the state of Nevada each year, and we take it as an opportunity to present some of the updates on transportation issues, funding issues that are facing the Nevada Department of Transportation, as well as get approval of our annual work program. One of the things, in the interest of time, I'm going to just keep it short to a couple of issues. And our director, Susan Martinovich, has been the president of AASHTO for nearly a year now, and has worked tirelessly on this issue of federal funding and the new transportation funding bill, which is usually a 5 to 6 year bill. So Susan will give a short update on the status of her efforts there and working with Congress. She's actually testified before Congress and worked with AASHTO and other state DOT secretaries and directors of transportation. She's going to take a few moments to kind of update you on that issue of federal funding.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Board. Just a couple things to throw out is that we've mentioned before that the transportation bill that we were under, Safety Lieu, expired on September 30th of 2009. And we have been under 6 or 7 continuing resolutions at that time, which makes it really difficult for us to function because we don't know when or how much or what the criteria of the money has been. To date, they've just extended it, or they have extended it to September 30th of this year, continuing with the amount of money that was under Safety Lieu, so at about a $42 billion a year level. There's been a proposal from the President and the administration of about a $550 billion bill over 6 years, which is great. It's higher than the money we've received. It also proposes to narrow down the many categories. The challenge with that bill is that it's not funded. There's only an amount of money in the National Highway Trust Fund to fund about 3 years of it, so the rest of it is really an unfunded bill. The House, just recently, Congressman Micah rolled out his proposal for a bill that would also be a 6-year bill, also provides some really exciting things of limiting the amount of categories that the federal money has. However, that bill is in the range of a $250 billion bill, which, putting it down into numbers that Nevada uses, it would be, instead of the $42 million a year that we're currently enjoying, billion a year that we're currently enjoying, it would be about $27 billion a year because it's tied to the amount of money in the federal highway fund. So that's about a 35% cut that we would receive in federal money, which equates to about a $70 to $80 million a year hit to our federal allocation. So we're watching that closely. The Senate is proposing to roll out a bill yesterday or today, and I'm scheduled to testify in front of the EPW committee on Thursday about just the need to have a multi-year transportation bill that's flexible and allows the states to put the money where we think it's most appropriate to put it, but also to have a well-funded bill. So we're just kind of watching. The intent is that the House would have a bill, the Senate would have a bill, they would go to caucus and decide on what the bill will look like. If nothing is done by September 30th, it just goes to default, which is almost the worst-case scenario, because then the House, or then the Appropriations Committee will be responsible, and they will just move forward with continuing resolutions at the amount that the Highway Trust Fund could sustain, and that is at that lower level. So we're watching very closely and keeping fingers crossed. But in the meantime, we're assuming and getting projects ready to go, because we feel that if and when we get money, we want to be able to put it out on the ground and get the benefit from them under whatever categories and criteria they give us. So thank you. And Rudy, you can
Thank you, Susan. And just to mention, at the state level, we submitted our budget was approved with one change, and that was with Department of Public Safety, Department of Motor Vehicles, and NDOT draw down on the State Highway Trust Fund. And the State Highway Fund was impacted by shifting DMV's $52 million from DMV, from general fund to draw down on the State Highway Fund. What that does is NDOT usually submits a budget that at the end of the biennium would be a balance of $100 million. So the $52 million that DMV gets to draw down from that account for collection of the government services tax is going to impact the ending balance. So we have to figure out what that'll do for our capital improvement program, and definitely we'll update the board and all the counties if projects are cut as a result of that. The other issue that I wanted to mention is safety. Safety is a huge issue for NDOT. We put together, in concert with different emergency responders, police and fire, with engineering representatives from across the state, not just NDOT, and educators, to the Strategic Highway Safety Plan. And we've been implementing that for a few years now. Centerline rumble strips is one of the approaches that we've been doing. Median cable barrier rail that we've put in on State Route 160. You see those around the state as safety measures that we're implementing. We have seen fatalities drop from a high of 434 in 2006 to 256 fatalities in 2010, but NDOT is not resting on that. We're trying to, we've adopted a zero fatality goal. We know that that's going to be difficult and challenging to reach, but if you would ask anybody, how many fatalities would you accept or injuries on our highways in your family, and they would answer zero. So that's what we're doing as far as that approach. As was mentioned by Dr. O'Haney, the annual work program is primarily the maintenance program of NDOT. You'll see a lot of state-funded projects. There are some federally funded, but the federal funded projects are typically going through the Transportation Improvement Program approval process through the RTC, which is brought to this board. So that's why you don't see a lot of the larger projects in this list. These are maintenance projects, and 3R, which is mainly the pavement preservation program for NDOT. So with that, willing to answer any questions about general issues with NDOT, and respectfully request approval of our 2012 annual work program.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Commissioner June Kiliani.
Thank you, Rudy and Susan. So you're going forward also with Project Neon. Is that part of this presentation? Because I think you're starting the acquisition phase.
Yes, we received the record of decision last October, so we're proceeding with the right-of-way setting first, and then we've been working on doing the evaluation of the property values, so that when they have those appraisals, then we make offers. It's a certain procedure that we follow, the Federal Uniform Relocation Act.
I attended one of the public hearings, and it's actually in Councilwoman Tarkanian's district, but I still remain concerned those folks have been in limbo. It's not necessarily your fault, but there are property values forever. Now, so one lady did bring to the one meeting that there's a historic designation that was overlaid by the feds. Do you then take that into consideration as part of your process and the cost?
Yes, it is typically any area that's historic. We work with the State Historical Preservation
Because it was ironic.
Office.
You had some houses right next door to each other that weren't, so, but that may be something that has to be still flushed out as far as that's concerned. And then for those of us who don't always believe, I'll speak for myself, that we need to add more lanes, that we should be doing things to encourage folks to get out of their cars. One of the considerations or concerns that was raised by some of the constituents there was that this was really more to add more lanes. My understanding from the meeting, it was really to do the HOV component in that section. So just for the record, if you could clear that up.
Yes, they're both. I-15 will be widened, but one of the major elements of Project Neon is to have the connection from the HOV lanes on US 95, where they end currently by MLK, and connect those with a flyover structure to the median, the middle of I-15, where the express lanes end. So it'll be a huge improvement for transit. They have express buses that run down 95 now and have to stop and get off downtown. They would have connection to the resort corridor and where employees work.
And then finally, there was a consideration, or at least a comment that had been made, that the businesses on where the Wholesome Lofts are, that they apparently paid to put in that drive and signal at the request of the city, and that they may be impacted by Project Neon, which affects their property values. Has there, or actually restricts their access? Has that been discussed with them, or do you know?
That's something that I know that the project manager is working with all the property owners along there on to deal with any of those issues with access, impacts. Grand Central Parkway as part of Project Neon will go over Charleston instead of having an at-grade intersection. But there will still be access to Charleston from Martin Luther King, which will have a flyover bridge over I-15. So
Okay.
there'll still be access, but some of those property-specific issues will be worked out with the.
And then with the reopening of F Street, if it's going to impact Grand Central Parkway, we won't have any further blockages of that neighborhood. There's no impact on them, right?
Depends on what you say, which neighborhood and.
I'm sorry, the F Street, the west side, that was kind of closed off and is going to be reopened. If you look at one map I saw with the realignment of trying to fix it easier for folks to get around on Grand Central Parkway and the Bonneville area, should not impact what you're going to do, because I just saw you're letting the bid on the F Street opening. Is that correct, Susan?
What we're doing on F Street is working with the city to develop the design and then hopefully next year do the procurement process to.
Okay, I'm just making,
for the construction.
if there's going to be any impact, let's make sure it's all looked at in that plan. Because I was told, right, wrong, or otherwise, that originally that part of Project Neon was done just to help and benefit one particular developer in that core. I've been assured that that's not the truth. It's really more trying to make sure that people don't have to go through that loop on Grand Central to get onto the highway and some other
Yes.
logistics that were going to be straightened out.
Definitely, the Charleston interchange is really a
It's a
poor
mess.
design for that area, and it's a mess.
Okay, thank you.
So it'll be addressed.
And Commissioner, just for clarification, we are not letting out a bid for F Street right now. That project's still under design, it's still moving forward, but it's still not in that time frame to have a bid or in there. Thanks.
I do have a question too. With regards to your work program, do you also work on the whole complete streets concept where you're looking at ways of integrating other forms of transportation like bicycles?
Actually, we were able to participate in yesterday's workshop and have been involved in the study through RTC's invitation, and we appreciate that. NDOT does have a lot of arterials in the valley, and we work with different entities that in their jurisdictions. For instance, the RTC and the county on Sahara, the city of Las Vegas also on Sahara, and then on Boulder Highway, that was working with the RTC on their CM at Risk project there. So we definitely see ourselves as a partner in that effort and implementing the policies that are developed as part of the Complete Streets.
Very good. Entertain a motion. Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Commissioner, I just want to thank the staff from RTC and all the local entities in working with us and the relationship that we've had through the years. It's really positive for the state and especially this community, so thank you. And I'd also like to recognize our Federal Highway Administration Administrator Sue Klecker, who's in the audience. That's a big portion of our working together, is working with our FHWA partners. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, although
Councilwoman.
he's already seated, I just wanted to...
This was one of the bills out of the legislature this session. It wasn't anywhere at one point RTC was designated as the lead agency. SB 506 enables the RTC to work with a company that wants to finance through a public-private partnership the state's first and only toll road. The new toll road demonstration project is aimed at relieving the traffic bottleneck in Boulder City, created by the opening of the North Las Vegas and NDOT to establish the Henderson to North Las Vegas fixed guideway corridor, with a fixed guideway beginning at Navajo and Henderson and ending up at UNLV's North Las Vegas regional campus. However, after time in the legislative meat grinder, it ended up with the RTC establishing only a regional rapid transit authority with no fixed guideway component, and with the general manager of the RTC serving as the chair of the authority. The authority is tasked with developing a plan for a regional rapid transit system. Now, Mr. Chairman, I worked with Senator Schneider and Assembly Government Affairs Chairwoman Marilyn Kirkpatrick to offer amendment language that would allow us to include several other provisions left out of our RTC Act bill from last session that I mentioned a bit earlier. However, legislative legal staff later determined that although we were attempting to amend NRS 277A, which is our language, the RTC Act, our proposed amendment was not considered germane and was therefore dropped from further consideration. Now, Mr. Chairman, I mention this because much has been made of an alleged last-minute attempt to add the NDOT director as a voting member of the RTC. As Mr. Snow has stated publicly, we had several provisions we were trying to work into other existing bills throughout the session. Now, to that point, on Sunday, April 10th, RTC legal counsel Zev Kaplan sent me, Jacob, and the RTC's Tracy Bauer an email which proposed amendment language for my use to amend into either SB 432, the bonding bill, or perhaps another bill during the session. The amendment that Zev emailed contained 4 provisions. Number 3 of 4 was to add the NDOT director as a voting member to the RTC. The same proposed amendment, later deemed not germane, was presented to the Assembly Government Affairs Committee for consideration to Senate Bill 151. That was on Wednesday morning, May 11th. That amendment can still be found today on the legislative website where it was originally uploaded by LCB staff to the legislature's Nellis system for bill documents. Moving on, Senate Bill 146 could have been an expensive bill for the RTC. SB 146 originally required that all diesel fuel sold in Nevada contain at least 10% biodiesel. Such a mandate would have cost us an additional 12 cents a gallon to meet this B10 requirement. That translates to a fuel bill of $1.3 million a year higher, or the equivalent of 20,000 service hours. We worked with the biodiesel lobbyist on an amendment which provided an exemption for the RTC fleet. The original bill did not make it out of committee by the April 15th deadline. However, we were alerted it would rise again and be amended into another bill, and as we watched for it to reappear late in the session, it did. But it was pulled out of a subsequent bill. Still, it was coming back, we were told. It continued to be worked on, in fact, until deep into the last night. Last-minute maneuvering failed to deliver a compromise, and so a biodiesel fuel mandate did not make it out of the 2011 legislative session. Senate Bill 137 was a State Senator John Lee's biennial bus turnout bill. This session, the chairman of Senate Government Affairs wanted 15 additional bus stops to be constructed by the end of 2014. Fortunately, because of the Sahara project funded by a federal Tiger grant, we were able to identify an additional 15 locations that satisfied the senator's needs without significant fiscal impact to you, our member entities. The bill this session also requires that the RTC establish a technical advisory committee to coordinate with utility companies on the locations for the turnouts to minimize the cost of relocating utility lines. We can use the existing Utility Coordination Committee meetings to accomplish just that. SB 137 was signed by the governor, and it is now law. Assembly Bills 257 and 59 are changes to the state's open meeting law. AB 257 stipulates that comments by the general public must be taken at the beginning of the meeting before any action items are heard, and again before the adjournment of the meeting, or after each action item on the agenda is discussed by the public body, but before the public body takes a vote. In a conference committee, an additional amendment was added, making it clear an additional public comment period must be offered on any matter agendized or not before the meeting is adjourned. AB 59, among its many provisions, aims to make agendas easier to follow by placing the term "for possible action" next to any item on which action may be taken. It also allows for reasonable restrictions on general public comments, including restrictions on time, place, and manner of the comments, but may not restrict comments based on viewpoint. Assembly Bill 144 sailed through both houses of the legislature and was signed by the governor when the session was young, back in the month of April. This bill, dubbed Nevada Jobs First, dealt with bidding preferences for local contractors. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Just to review a couple of main points, state law allows local contractors to qualify for a preference in bidding on public work contracts if the contractor can show that he has paid taxes in the state for the last 5 years. The bill requires a contractor or a design build team to meet additional criteria in order to qualify for the preference. Under the bill, the contractor or design build team must ensure at least half the employees have a valid Nevada driver's license or ID. Also, the contractor's non-apportioned vehicles must register in Nevada, and at least a quarter of the materials for the projects come from suppliers located here in the Silver State. Commissioner Ross and all those fellow hardcore bicyclists will soon be safer on Nevada's roads with the passage of Senate Bill 248. SB 248 requires if drivers are to pass a cyclist, drivers must move into the lane to the left of the cyclist if there is an additional lane, or that they move over at least 3 feet between their vehicle and the cyclist. The bill has been approved by the governor, and it's going to take effect come October. Assembly Bill 152, though, did not quite finish the race. AB 152 is a bill that would have established an advisory committee to make recommendations relating to the funding of highway projects. The advisory committee members would have been appointed by the Senate and Assembly leadership and would have authorization to place advisory ballot questions before voters in the 2012 general election to gauge the public sentiment on the Commission's recommendations. The legislature approved the bill, but Governor Sandoval vetoed it. In his veto message, the governor indicated the bill unnecessarily expands government and circumvents the legislative process. NDOT, overseen by the State Transportation Board, oversees highway funding, wrote the governor, and such an advisory committee would be redundant. And finally, a bill whose time had not come, certainly not this session. Senate Bill 490 is a bill that would have allowed the Board of County Commissioners here in Clark County to index the fuel tax to inflation. In 2008, Washoe County voters approved a ballot question that favored indexing their gas tax to inflation, and the 2009 legislature approved a bill allowing the Washoe County Commission to implement the tax. This bill would have allowed the RTC of Southern Nevada to benefit in the same way, but the bill didn't make it out of the Senate Revenue Committee. In fact, the bill never even had its first hearing, giving you a sense of what the mood was like when it came to increasing taxes at the legislature. Mr. Chairman, in conclusion, any success that the RTC enjoyed in Carson City during the past session was a direct result of the team effort on the ground here in Las Vegas, and it has to start at the top. Jacob Snow was available to provide lawmakers the comfort level that they required on a number of bills by making himself available to testify whenever the general manager's expertise or presence was required, often at odd hours, often great stretches of time, and even on Sunday afternoons. Tina Quigley, Zev Kaplan, Tracy Bauer, Sandy Stanko, Dr. Fred O'Haney, and others contributed whatever was necessary as often as necessary to help in the ongoing job, which is the work of the RTC at the Nevada State Legislature. I want to publicly recognize them for their invaluable efforts. I thank you for, as always, for your kind attention. Be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Commissioner.
Thank you. On the 3 feet bicyclist safety issue, that doesn't conflict with what I think I've asked Public Works to look at, Jacob, which is the new parking means that many cities are or some cities are going to where you actually have your sidewalk, your bike lane, and your parking lanes so that you're actually moving them away from traffic. So this would not restrict us continuing to move forward on that?
It would not.
Okay. And then secondly, on SB 490, the fuel tax indexing, that's the one that Washoe County did three sessions ago,
right,
that we didn't get into the mix on. Is it
voter mandated first?
Right, voter mandate, that's right, they did do a vote. Are we prohibited from putting something on the ballot?
No.
Okay. And do we, at some point, want to have that discussion? Yes. Okay, all right. So I think we still should. It's still the right thing to do for the community, and I think it'll still get us where we need to go. So I wasn't sure if there was a mixed message that by vetoing it, we still could not take action or look at what we need to do to be responsible for our constituents. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Director Martinovich.
Thank you. I would like to provide additional comment on AB 144. That was the bidding preference for local contractors. If there is any federal monies in a job, we cannot do bidder's preference, and so that's part of federal statute. So just wanted to clarify that. It's for, in our case, that would be applicable for state-funded only, but if there's $1 federal money in there, it follows the federal rules.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Gresh, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. We really appreciate Brian's efforts, and now that the session is over, he can stop consuming Red Bulls by the court. I don't think he slept. He did an excellent job. I think his ties speak for his performance up there. They were outstanding, and we appreciate the opportunity to work with him. Your next item is item 52, which is to approve a program of projects for receipt of grant funds from New Freedom and Job Access of First Commute Funding and direct staff accordingly. Now, Sandra Stanko, our Director of Transit, is here, and she is going to provide a presentation on this. But to be concise, the RTC receives federal funds from two programs. Job Access and Reverse Commute, or JARC, is providing federal funds for allowing welfare recipients to get to work. That's specific. And New Freedom funds are designed specifically to assist the elderly and the disabled with transportation options that go above and beyond the Americans with Disabilities Act. And I'd like Sandy to come forward at this time and make a presentation. I understand there are some people in the audience who have a few words they'd like to say to the Commission about how, if these projects are approved for their not-for-profits, how it will help the community. Sandy?
Thank you, Jacob. Mr. Chairman, actually, I'm going to hand this off to Sue Joseph, our Manager of Specialized Services, who's going to give the presentation. So thank you.
Thank you, Sandy.
Mr. Chairman, item 42 recommends that the board approve the program of projects for receipt of funds from Job Access Reverse Commute, which is called JARC, and New Freedom Funding, and direct staff accordingly. But before we go forward, we'd like to just take a moment and look at our success. In 2011, the JARC funding provided for 19 separate programs. These programs were distributed based on 10 local nonprofit programs. 4 went for RTC programs for fixed route from JARC funding, and 5 of the programs were funded by New Freedom for paratransit programs. This funding added about 219,000 trips into our service areas and allowed us to make some capital purchases as well. 16 vehicles were funded. 1 was for a minivan for a local nonprofit. 2 cutaway buses for 2 local nonprofits, and 13 cutaway buses were able to be absorbed into the paratransit fleet. We're also happy to note that the capital purchases were for a telephone and hardware-software program that helped a Boulder City nonprofit help with volunteer transportation and doing reservations and tracking. This is our 3rd award that we have done. We've been able to award $8.3 million to help support coordinated transportation programs. The $2.6 million this year will go to assist us to go beyond what the requirements of the ADA are and for access for employment for the low-income and disabled individuals. The map that you have in front of you helps to show how we have been able to continue to develop a coordinated transportation network here in the Las Vegas Valley. And with the cooperation of the applicants, we feel very positive about the development of this network. With service area cuts, this network provides potential transportation referrals for customers who live outside of the ADA and fixed route service areas. What you're looking at is in the red borders. The interior of that is our current ADA fixed route and paratransit service areas. Outside of those borders, where you see colored areas, That represents where our partners are currently providing services. So we think that this network is very important to all of us as we move forward. At this time, we would like to invite some of our applicants to address the board, and we're going to start with RTC's newest participant in the New Freedom Program from Nevada Adult Day Healthcare Centers.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Board. My name is Chris Vito with Nevada Adult Day Healthcare Centers. Nevada Adult Day Healthcare Centers is an adult day healthcare center that cares for the elderly and disabled during the day. We also provide transportation services for the elderly and disabled. The RTC has been extremely conscientious about providing elderly and disabled transportation services, in this particular case, healthcare transportation services. With this particular project funding, Nevada Adult Day Healthcare Centers will be providing non-emergency healthcare transportation services for the new VA hospital. This area is actually outside of RTC's catchment area or service area. Nevada Adult Day Healthcare Centers will be providing non-emergency healthcare transportation services for seniors and veterans who need to get to their medical appointments and healthcare centers. Nevada Adult Day Healthcare Centers is a healthcare-focused organization. We give door-to-door service to ensure they're transported with their health and safety. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the Commission. My name's Fran Smith. I'm Director of ITN Las Vegas Valley. ITN is the Independent Transportation Network. Through New Freedom Funds, we have been able to start a new senior transportation service in the Valley, starting in Henderson and a couple of nearby zip codes. With this funding, we have been able to develop the capability not only to open up new transportation options for seniors, but we've also developed the capacity to be able to supplement some of the publicly provided transportation to seniors and people with disabilities. Initially, our partnership with the RTC has enabled us to extend paratransit service to Anthem and Seven Hills, which lies outside the paratransit service area. And then with the cutbacks that became effective June 1, that service has been opened up to all residents of our service area who, while they may be grandfathered under the old route, have not been able to go to the destinations that they want to get to. In addition, we have the capability now of entering into a partnership with the Henderson Seniors Auxiliary to supplement and extend the service that the City of Henderson provides to and from the Heritage Park Senior Facility. With this next round of funding, we will be further able to expand our services to seniors who live in our service area, and we will actually be able to expand our service area. And Commissioner Giuliani might be interested to know that under this grant, we will be extending into 3 more zip codes in your commission district. So really, if it weren't for this funding and our relationship with the Regional Transportation Commission, we would not be seeing this increase in transportation services to seniors and people with disabilities.
Thank you.
Deb Dowenhauer, Executive Director, Southern Nevada Transit, 260 East Laughlin, Civic Drive, Laughlin. We operate transit for the RTC in Laughlin, Mesquite, and Boulder City. I wanted to tell you about, we have 2 New Freedom grants. One is one that's been around. This is, I believe, our 3rd year of funding. It's our New Freedom Boulder City grant, and this affords those disabled and seniors, residents of Boulder City, to have access to the urban areas of Henderson and Las Vegas. The primary purpose is not surprising medical related. There are some recreational trips and such. But what we're really proud of this is that we are able to operate the program much more efficiently because we have actually have an operation set up in Boulder City. So the ADA trips, we believe that we are able to take over some of the ADA trips that maybe would have been provided by the other provider, which we don't have any deadheads since we're in Boulder, right there in Boulder City. So we're doing it much more efficiently. And another New Freedom grant is that we've had, and we're grateful to our relationship with the RTC, is a partnership that we have with the Jewish Federation of Las Vegas. And this is very unique, I believe it's very unique, because it's taking us, Southern Nevada Transit, a rural nonprofit organization, partnering with the Jewish Federation of Las Vegas, which is an urban nonprofit organization, and we're putting rural people from Laughlin, Searchlight, Calnavary, and Palm Gardens on the same bus as urban people that live in Henderson. So instead of having 2 buses, 2 drivers, double fuel, double everything, we're able to accomplish all of this on 1 bus. So how great is that? And it's working out great too. The socialization is wonderful because the rural people are getting to meet other disabled and seniors that they would never have met. So it's just wonderful all the way around. So we're very excited and we're hoping for a positive outcome this year on the funding on this agenda item. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Dwayne Carr. I'm the compliance manager at Opportunity Village. What we do is we provide employment and employment training for individuals with disabilities. And what the JOC grant has done for us is we have been able to add 4 new vehicles to our fleet and provide opportunities for 73 individuals to go to their employment each quarter on an average. We have also, since the program opened over the past year, we've been in the program since January of 2010. But over the past year, we have opened up more than 23,000 hours for employment opportunity hours for individuals with disabilities. We have also been able to get other opportunities that we didn't have before the commencement of this program. And 6 new contracts have come up that we would not have had a chance to bid on without these transportation opportunities. During this period also, we have received a total of over $85,000 to help us support our programs. So with the continuation of this program, we plan to continue the contracts that we currently have and keep people employed in these opportunities and also expand upon it with our strategic goals for the next fiscal year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, after the awarding the community applicants, RTC then assigns the remaining balance to its own projects for JARC and New Freedom. This year, examples of 2 of the New Freedom programs are the continuing program, which helps us to support same-day reservations in paratransit, as well as adult daycare transportation. And then a new program this year that we're very excited about is the Transit Mobility Training Program that you approved the staffing for in your last June agendas. The last item is for you to look at the remaining items that are being brought forward to you for approval, and the summary is before you. At this time, we would also like to have a representative from Lend a Hand address the board.
Good morning, Commissioners and my mayor, Roger Tobler. Thank you so much for last year's contribution. It changed us from the dark ages to something quite operable and saved us. We have figured at the moment 39 hours a month in reduction of processing the rides for the elderly, the disabled, and the poverty. We are unique in that we are a donation-only based operation, and the poverty pay nothing. In fact, anybody can pay nothing, but those who have it usually do. We recruit and train volunteer drivers, so we are also unique in that we're not using their equipment. and they supported us by giving us our software that changed our life and computers. We were living with one laptop and manual systems. So it has been a big change, and in fact, really didn't get under operation until October, so we're not a full year with that system in operation. Our year ended June 30th, and in that year, we were able to do 3,264 trips. And also the uniqueness about us is that we're escorted by the volunteer, stays with them, helps them in and out, and so they do not have to call somebody to come pick them up. So the volunteer drivers go through training on how to do that, how to use equipment, how to recognize elder abuse, all of those rules that we live by. We traveled 54,748 miles with volunteer cars. So that is huge, and mostly because we're rural and all of the doctors, surgeries, dialysis, all of those things are in town. We cannot thank you enough for our first grant year, and now this is our second one, that will help maintain the program, get our website, make us a little more operational, and it has been a huge thanks to this grant.
Thank you.
The agenda item before you requests that the RTC Board approve the proposed program of projects. If approved, staff will develop individual subrecipient agreements and bring the final agreements to the Board for approval.
Thank you. Todd Farlow, 240 North 19th Street. I got a quick question. How come nothing goes to the VA hospital?
Okay, we can answer that right after the meeting, Todd. Thank you. Comments or questions from the board? Commissioner?
Thank you. That was actually going to be one of mine, because the route doesn't seem to bump up to the hospitals. Is there a reason for that?
We'll be happy to bring that back to the commission.
Okay. Because there are also
Yeah, I can
clinics that
also
we ought
just,
to.
if you're referring to the new VA hospital in North Vegas,
That's because it's anticipated.
That's
more.
correct.
That's what I
That's
figured
correct.
it was?
Yes.
Okay.
We are very excited that it's a new facility.
So you're
again,
preparing
outside
ahead of time.
Absolutely.
So I think that just needs to be made for the record.
Perfect.
But there are veterans clinics. Do we, if they request, if they start to have a volume of ridership or anything along those lines?
If they want to participate in the process, we're happy to receive them and evaluate their applications.
And the only reason I ask is I've been made aware of the president has a program called Opening Doors, and it's for our homeless veterans. And part of it is how to engage them into the world of work process. So I just wasn't sure if anybody had thought about that next step, which is how do you open doors to make sure that vets that can go to work can get that access or access to job training. So that just might be something that comes down the road. As a commission, we'll be doing an acknowledgement on that through a resolution next week. So second thing would be in looking at the routes, are there restrictions for where you can take folks using the federal dollars? I mean, like, you don't just take them to gamble for recreation purposes. Do we actually take them to, I would assume it's majority of it is medical, grocery shopping, other kinds of access, especially for those who may be normally isolated that can get out and about if they had the access to the vehicles.
Some of the nonprofits actually do have some restrictions that they're just for medical. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act, though, we cannot restrict by trip type. So, but some of the folks that we are funding do have restrictions based on their
service. So it depends on their particular nonprofit
But I would
status.
say the majority of are for medical.
And I just want to thank the group, because I got called like the day the Jewish Federation didn't have a route. And so I'm glad to hear that you're working with them closely, and that this may now accommodate the loss of that ADA three-quarter mile issue and still allow them to be able to attend some of the functions that they needed to. So thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the program of projects proposed.
There's a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the
And Jake,
commission.
I'd just like to also comment, I mean, this is one of those agenda items that slips by too quickly, but certainly on behalf of the board and the RTC, we want to thank the FTA, their partnership and support, and the various community groups that probably go unrecognized, but when you get to hear and see clients from Opportunity Village, from Easter Seals, from some of our elderly communities, be the beneficiaries of this and bring a whole new level of quality of life to these individuals. We should be very proud of that as a public agency, and we thank all our partners, from those here today to the FTA, to everybody that makes this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We appreciate that very much. I've asked General Counsel Zev Kaplan to introduce the next item.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, item 53 is regarding rescission of your vote from the May 19th, 2011 meeting with regard to the fixed route transit operations and maintenance contract. As you recall, at your May 19th meeting, the RTC voted, there were 7 members of the 8 present, voted 4-3 to award the fixed route service contract to First Transit, who was the #1 ranked proposer from the procurement. Subsequent to that, an issue arose regarding the validity of the vote and the applicability of a section of the open meeting law which requires a majority of the members of the entire body rather than a majority of the quorum present to have a valid vote. At your direction following our June meeting, I requested on behalf of the RTC direction from the Attorney General's office as to the applicability of that section. The Attorney General declined to make a determination on our request. Shortly after that, I believe Veolia Transportation, through their counsel, submitted an open meeting law complaint, upon which the Attorney General subsequently on July 8th made a determination that the open meeting law requirement of a majority of the members of the board are needed to have an effective vote. And so as a part of that determination, the Attorney General directed the RTC to rescind its vote of 4-3 of May 19, 2011, rather than have the Attorney General seek enforcement of under its jurisdiction to enforce the open meeting law requirements and void that action. The time for that to run would be end of business next Monday for the Attorney General to seek that. We subsequently amended the agendas to give you the opportunity at this meeting to follow direction of the Attorney General and rescind your vote of May 19th. It's my recommendation and staff's that you follow the direction of the Attorney General. I believe the RTC is obligated to do so legally, since the Attorney General is charged with the interpretation and enforcement of the open meeting law, and I'd recommend that the Commission take action to rescind its vote.
Very good. Comments or questions from the board? Commissioner?
You do not, in this case, have to have voted on the prevailing side to do the rescission, so I think that just needed to be clear for the record.
That's correct. This is not a reconsideration.
Right. So if you need a motion, Mr. Chair, if there's no further discussion, I would make a motion to rescind the action by which the contract was offered to First Transit.
And Councilman Hafen?
Since I'm a rookie here, I have a few questions. And if it's a rookie question, I apologize, but I might ask a few of these as we go forward in the years to come. But it appears to me if, and I'm going to take a hypothetical here, if we can do that, if in time the whichever court has jurisdiction over this ruling comes back and says the AG was in error of their interpretation of the open meeting law, where do we go from there?
Ultimately, it would depend on what the court states in its ruling. The court could determine that it's not, the court is, none of the courts are bound by the opinion of the Attorney General. That's persuasive to the court. So a court, in theory, could determine that a different outcome, and they may say that the vote in May was valid. How the court would then deal with the fact that you've now rescinded that, I can't tell you definitively. The court may address that and say that that has no effect, and in fact, the earlier vote was still effective. That would be up to the court. Just for the Commission's information, I was informed by counsel. I have not received any notice from the Supreme Court, but counsel for First Transit informed me that their petition for a writ was denied by the Supreme Court, and basically were told that their venue would be to go to district court. I don't believe they've made a determination whether or not to file. So at this time, it's my understanding there is no pending court matter. That's not to say that they wouldn't subsequently file, and we'd be faced with the dilemma that the Councilman Hafen has raised, but I'm sorry, but I can't give you a more definitive answer at this point.
So going forward, we rescind this vote. What's the next step?
The next step would be for the matter to be brought back to this board, probably at your August meeting, as though it had never happened, with the same the evaluations and recommendation. It'd be up to this board, as the policy board, to decide whether or not you are going to award that contract or take some other appropriate action. So it's as though the past period of time didn't occur, and you're still faced with the same thing this commission faced at the May board meeting. Obviously, now you know clearly it requires 5 votes because it's an 8-member commission.
Thank you.
And I'll jump in on the rookie question. In defense and protection of the councilman, is he allowed to participate in the rescission of a vote he wasn't involved with?
Yes. And in fact, I just further reiterate, in discussions with the Attorney General's office, the only abstentions you're allowed to do as a board member are because of ethical conflicts with an opinion of counsel. Otherwise, you're not even entitled to abstain anymore. And obviously, if you're not present, you don't have to vote. But
very good. Just wanted to.
That's not the answer I wanted to hear, Mr. Kaplan. If you would let me stay, we'd be back to the same program, 4-3.
Possibly.
Okay. I think there's a motion on the floor to follow staff's recommendation to follow the direction from the AG's office on their opinion. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your next item is...
Thank you. I think, just to be clear, though, for the purposes of the next meeting, whatever agenda items come, there could be a variety of things that come back for us to consider. Because, again, the motion that 3 of us voted for was to really go back and split the RFP and go back out to bid. So there still could be other formats that can help us move forward. So there's flexibility that's there. Staff still is entitled to bring back what their recommendation was. Many of us originally felt very comfortable with parts of that, but then other issues came up in public testimony on loss of minority jobs and hiring and some things along those lines. And so that's what changed that format.
And likewise, if I could follow up, and Zev, stop me if I go too far, but this is continuing to be a very fluid process. I know that there's been conversations between the general manager and both First Transit and Veolia as far as what potentially our next step could be, what options there are from a policy standpoint. So I would encourage those conversations to continue. But I also agree that coming back next month, that agenda item should speak to a menu of options that this board can then provide direction to staff from the policy perspective.
yeah, I believe the intent was, and Jacob and I have had discussions already, and I know he has with his other senior staff, there'd probably be more than one agenda item to give the board flexibility, depending on what the majority of the board determines it wants to do.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Commissioner.
Along with that, it would be helpful if you could also find out from Veolia where they are at in their actual contract negotiations with the employees, so that we have that information in front of us to consider. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. If there are no other questions or comments, your next item is citizens' participation.
We ask those that wish to speak to the board, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Joe Maviglia, Citizens Committee for Better Transit. I have seen something happen here today that makes me start to believe in the process. It's exciting. Don't happen that often. But when you see something like this happen, and somebody, I don't know from where, throws up a red flag and says something's wrong here. Something's wrong. And because this has occurred, I would caution this committee to be on your toes. Cross the T's and dot the I's. And if in the end somebody has been playing dirty, I hope to hell they're caught and punished. And that would be my satisfaction to see that occur. Now, I can't accuse because I have no proof. But I've been in this process for quite some time. And I've seen the good of it and the bad of it. And I fought the bad and fought for the good. We, as a Citizens Committee, even though we weren't recognized, we felt that our duty as volunteers to fight for a decent bus system. Because at the time this occurred, we didn't have a decent bus system. We had a rip-off operation going up and down the strip, and there was only 13 buses running around trying to serve the community. Now, I let it go for a long time. But then when I heard about $600 million to run this system, from the infancy that we started, it's scary. Especially when there's a $50 million shortfall. Nah, something's wrong. I don't know what, but something's wrong. So please be very cognizant of your duty. See that you do it, and do it with dispatch. And all too often, you vote your conscience and you vote a system in, whether it's Veolia or First Transit. You do not have the duty to find out if any one outfit is dirty. But if it should come to pass, we don't want to wait till after the fact. You've got a golden opportunity to nip this in the bud before the fact, before you have to wait for prosecutions like the past and what goes on in this city. And again, I thank you for your effort and what you've done. It shows me that there's still hope for boards and commissions to do the right thing and do the job that they're assigned to do. And if that happens in the long run, we're all blessed for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. Herman Ross, National Insurance Consultants, 8687 West Sahara. My question is, from our previous meetings and how many months we've gone, has anyone checked into the fact of the DBE participation only applies to federal funds that may attach, and if there is a capability of adding local preferences attached to any contracts that are awarded, as we've discussed in the last 60 days? I'm aware that in other regions, there is attachment with regards to whatever the federal funds are with regards to the DBE goal, but there are communities that do make sure that there is local attachment to what state funds and local funds that are attached to those contracts. So I just want to verify if anyone, because I know that you had kind of issued that, or if it was Commissioner Chris that talked about that in the last 60 days with regards to, has the RTC discovered if that is available to us and for us to be able to attach that to any procurement requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. If we could make sure we're following up on that.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First, some good news. I'm not going to ask you to spend any money. Would you see that all the members of the commission get a copy of this, please? And there's a couple extra copies for staff. Just distribute them now, please. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. What? I'm sorry. Please state your name and address for the record. I will, right now. Yes, good morning. My name is Ray Carruthers. As indicated here, my address is 4330 Southeastern Avenue, number 112, Las Vegas, Nevada. My email and phone number is addressed down here as well as my paratransit code. I've actually addressed this commission on numerous occasions since 2009 regarding various handicapped issues. I'm happy to report that with your input, many happy results have come that have really assisted handicapped people. This is another one. Unfortunately, this is one where I have taken it to staff and gotten nowhere. I've spoken directly with Sue Joseph about this over a period of several years, even had written correspondence with her and her supervisors last year, and frankly was stonewalled. They wouldn't address it, and frankly gave me no reasons. What we're asking for is something very simple. It's a change in procedure to allow paratransit riders to be allowed to schedule medical and professional appointment rides 2 weeks in advance. Important points. First of all, there will be no cost to this change. The computer software is already in place to implement this. I've been told that directly by Sue Joseph. The scheduling operator would simply make the reservation for a date within 2 weeks. I would suggest a name and phone verification be provided. Cancellation procedures would remain the same. They have to be canceled at least a day in advance, or points are attributed, or whatever. I understand the no-show problem. This would be of great benefit to paratransit riders. This may not seem like a big thing, but please let me explain this to you. Medical and professional appointments are set several weeks in advance in most cases. But the way things sit at present, the paratransit rider must make a note to contact paratransit to schedule a ride, but not more than 3 days before. Okay? He then makes that note to be able to schedule that ride. Well, people may qualify for paratransit due to physical disability, but frankly, they're mentally challenged in many cases. I see it every day. I ride paratransit every day. And frankly, in most cases, it's their care provider that's making all these arrangements. The point is, for this added temps, they must make this schedule, they must make this appointment for their ride, but not more than 3 days in advance. Really adds a hardship, just in simply scheduling their life. And there's no reason for it. The software already exists to make this change. This is something they could start doing tomorrow. Now, again, I've had conversations directly with Sue Joseph on this, had written correspondence last year, and I've been stonewalled. They wouldn't address it, and wouldn't give me a reason why they wouldn't address it, which is why I've come to you directly. This is something you can do by simply a matter of direction. The paperwork, again, procedures are all established, the software is there. This is simply something that would be of great benefit to paratransit riders. I talk to people every day about this on the buses, and they all love it. I have a list of names and can get more. And frankly, through the paratransit riders list, and I know they've just curtailed service in some areas and some ways, and I understand the economics of this. We're funded by sales tax, and we've got a problem for at least for several more years, no question. Okay, but this is going to cost nothing to make this small change that would be a real benefit. Thank you very much. Before I sit down, do you have any question at all about what I'm suggesting here?
Commissioner.
Thank you. What would you mean by professional?
I'm sorry, ma'am?
What would you mean by professional appointments?
What would I need what?
Give me an example of a professional appointment.
Yeah, a professional would be, for instance, someone has an appointment with Social Security, or an attorney's appointment, or a legal appointment.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Something official, or a medical appointment. They're all set at least 2 weeks to 3 weeks in advance. But as it sits right now, the paratransit rider, frequently mentally challenged, could do nothing about scheduling a ride prior to 3 days.
Chris,
And that's
it's my
all I'm saying, and
understanding we
it's a
can't
small
discriminate
change,
on
again,
any
with no
rides
cost,
for
and I've been told the software to do this. Again, scheduling operators could start this tomorrow, and I would suggest they
Thank
take
you
a
very much.
name
I got
and
an answer.
address the phone number verification.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd Farlow, 240 North 19th Street. First of all, I'd like to compliment the men that did the amenities thing. That was a great presentation. Thank you very much, and they're doing a great job out there. Now, 2 meetings ago, I put out some problems that we had. None of them have been addressed. None of them. Most irritating is on Maryland Parkway underneath the 95. Somebody cemented or blocked in the bicycle path that crosses there. That has to be opened up. Number 2, for some reason, the bicycle paths, the trails, are closed at night. There's a sign that says they're closed at night. At Metro Physical Affairs, I asked Sheriff Gillespie why this was. If he didn't have it in his budget to secure those areas, he says he has no problem with that at all. So for those people, I can't ride during the day. I take a medicine that's processed through the skin. So I ride the bike at night. Why do they close off the trails? It would seem to me that you would want the bike riders out there at night to report any graffiti or anything like that. But that's an irritant to me. The second thing, I would like, do we have an overhead? Can we go to the map here?
We have it right now.
We need a map. We need a new map. If you notice right here, where it shows the trail that follows the 95, it's incorrect. They've got the detention center. You see that break right there? That's on the west side of Mojave. The detention center is actually on the east side. It ought to be right in this area right here instead. The other thing is that on that Flamingo Wash Trail that they have here, they need to put that crossover bridge that they've got on, I think it's called Allegheny, that crosses across the wash and goes to the Boulevard Mall down there. The second, the other thing is that when Zappos completes a campus downtown, we need to extend that trail that ends at Mesquite Street. We need to extend that onto their campus. That trail was already in place at one time. And then they closed it off. The city closed it off and put a traffic court down there, a trailer with a traffic court on that thing. Then they leased some of that, the space down there to Embark, the phone company. And then they've got the marshals down there. But anyway, it's all closed off. They had a promise that that was going to be a temporary deal. And this has been going on for over 10 years. So, I mean, what is temporary? That's the things that need to be addressed. Other than that, to close, I want to say this again. You guys are doing a terrific job with these bike paths. They are just outstanding. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Todd. Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jacob, did you have a staff member take a look at that? It may be a City of Las Vegas issue, not an RTC issue. What Todd's talking about, I mean, I was looking at the bike trails earlier on the website, and there's a lot of breaks I can see just on the map, but I'm less concerned about the map issues. I am the physical issues of the bike trails and people not being able to use them when they want to. So, thank you.
Yeah, and Todd, if you thanks, Councilman. Before you leave, would you give specific areas to one of the RTC staff members here, so we can find out whose responsibility is it?
And one more comment.
Not that we don't want you to come back next month, but you'll be back with new information for us.
And Mr. Chairman, also, Todd, those buildings are temporary. 10 years, that's kind of temporary for those buildings. So they'll all be moving soon, I can assure you that.
Volunteer advocate for the drivers and passengers. I wanted to ask on the bus stop presentation that was made, if I can get a list of all of the stops that do not have clearance for the disabled. Because we are trying at we do meetings at some of the senior complexes around town to inform them what's going on. And while we're suggesting that they ride the fixed route, I don't think that's going to happen in the summer, but that's just my assessment. I would like to have something to present them of the stops where they cannot disembark, so that when they're planning their schedule, they know that they're either going to have to stop before or after or whatever. It would be very helpful if somebody could provide that. Commissioner G brought up about the reduction of training and the sensitivity issue. I don't think this is the subject for an open forum, so I will email the commissioners and First Transit so they know what I'm saying about the current First Transit safety instructor. But in my case, if you check my schedule, you will see that I only ride once a week, unless there are tests or treatments that can't be brought to my apartment. In that short amount of riding, I have had to report 2 drivers, and I'm sure those of you that have been on the board a long time know how I feel about the drivers. That's why I help them fight their grievances and their work comp issues. But I had 2 drivers. One has already been reprimanded and appropriate action being taken. And the other, I had to wait. He was so violent appearing that I had to wait a long enough distance before I reported it so that he didn't associate it with me. If those are the kind of drivers we're going to be having, like I said, 99% are fabulous, but the screening isn't being done. The sensitivity training apparently is not being done, and I think it needs addressing, especially if you're going to put them in charge of your fixed bus route. And monthly pass, just briefly, I can't make the meeting on the 27th. I have a woman who works. Let me just preface it this way. If we could make an exception for the people that have legitimate jobs or medical situations that require that they ride or get treatment or go to work more than 4 days a week, you should somehow enable them to do that. I had a woman in tears. She has to work a split shift at the grocery store in order to keep her job. She works morning and then late night. So she goes, she comes home, then she goes back again and home again. We're talking $200 and something a month for this woman to go to work. So she says, I'm not going to be able to work. And now you're in our situation, so you can appreciate this. Disabled people, we need to feel productive, just like society. And if she can't go to work, it's not just a monetary thing, it's a work thing. And I'm going to bring up the dialysis patients again. We cannot put them in a position where they cannot get 5 days of dialysis if that's what they need, just because they're low income. It's unconscionable. So again, if they can prove employment or prove medical necessity, do what you can to make an exception, because that would be the right thing to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to the board?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Jose Mendoza Jr., I'm the president for A2 Local 1637, which right now we're negotiating with Veolia. I do want to say that they did give us a final proposal that we're going to present to the members. And I am a bit disappointed in the way the negotiating process went, and I'm going to be asking the members to reject it based on the fact that I have found some language that was inserted that we never discussed it. First of all, we shouldn't be here, and this should have been started, the negotiation processes last year. But the same language that was changed without our knowledge, now they want to try to change it so it could be approved and we won't have no more problems in the future. My thing is that if you're going to negotiate in good faith. Don't go and insert language and just arbitrarily give it to the union and say, take it to your members. This process, the RFP, has created a lot of hostilities between members and employees about who's better, First Transit or Veolia. We don't need that. And I am very disappointed because we got to deal with it. And, you know, hopefully we're going to continue negotiating, but we were given that final proposal, but I'm very disappointed in the way the negotiation process and the way they just throw the contract, here, take it to the members. And that's very unprofessional. And then I'll report to you guys next month. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is John Meters. I have been a loyal rider since 1994 when I moved here. I feel very fortunate to ride the bus. It's my only mode of transportation. I can't drive, so I would really like it. I'd really appreciate it if Veolia could keep the contract. It would be a great thing. I've talked to many senior drivers, other passengers, and it would just be everybody on the bus that I've spoken to have said that they want Veolia. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioners, I'm back. Jeff Rask, Financial Secretary for ATU. I'd just like to follow up on what our President said regarding the contract talks without going into detail on the talks. In our contract that we had with Veolia that is in place now, which expired on December 31st of last year, it would take an operator 12 years to get to the top pay. What Veolia has offered and put on the table in their final proposal to us, someone who is making $14 an hour, which is a little over the starting pay after 1 year, would take 20 years to get to $20, which is the top pay as of the last contract. 20 years to get to top pay without ever getting to the top pay because of the increase across the board that they have put in their proposal would allow those people at top pay to get a 1% increase. So that someone making $14 an hour could never get to the top pay. This is unacceptable to our local, to the leadership of our local. We want to make you aware of this. Other parts of the contract have not even been negotiated. They just laid it on the table to us and said, take this to your membership, and asked them to vote on it. Our guess is that they think that our members are not sufficiently savvy enough to understand that the majority of them, which make under $16 an hour, are going to see exactly that they can never get to the top and that their working conditions under the labor agreement will not be beneficial to them in other terms of job security. And we want to make sure that you understand this. And we intend to bring it to our membership and have them vote on it. And we will bring that vote back to you so that you can understand that it's unsatisfactory what their proposal is. And that is why, as part of the leadership, we've gone along with the recommendation of staff to go with First Transit. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to the board this afternoon? Seeing no one, this meeting is adjourned.